On today's episode of Home Media Minefield, I'm going to be looking at the Blu-ray of Dredd coming up. Hello, I'm Keith and welcome to Home Media Minefield, helping you with information to navigate the complexities of home cinema and home media entertainment. And on today's episode, I'm going to be looking at the Blu-ray of the 2012 film Dredd, the futuristic action-adventure film starring Karl Urban as the comic book character. Now, part of the reason that I've watched this film is because I was recently invited to be part of a panel on a live stream by Mr. Brown Alliance. So I rewatched the film for that. And it's now available as a vodcast, so I will put a link down below where you can find that if you want to check out that discussion. And thanks again to Mr. Brown for inviting me onto that panel. Okay, on to some release information, and Dredd came out in 2012 and was released shortly after on home media and has been released worldwide only under different distributors. For example, the North American distributor for this is Lionsgate, whereas the UK, for example, is Entertainment in Video. Now, this does result in some slightly differing specs dependent on where you got this film. I know, for example, that the German release and the Japanese release have very slightly different extras to most of the other discs. But in terms of running time, etc., these extras are only short and I don't think make any significant difference. I also believe, from what I've researched, that some of the extras on the Lionsgate release are just repackages of some of the shorter featurettes on the UK release, for example, so they don't differ too strongly. Now, so far the film has only been released on 4K UHD in North America under Lionsgate, and at the time I'm recording this I don't have any real information about whether it's coming on 4K in other regions. Obviously, 4K UHD being region free, you could pick up that North American Lionsgate release, but do bear in mind that the accompanying Blu-ray that comes with it is region A locked. Now, in many cases, including this UK release, the 3D version of the film is also available on the same disc, but obviously you have to have the appropriate TV, Blu-ray player and associated glasses in order to be able to watch that in 3D. I can also see that wherever you buy it, there aren't actually any cuts to this. Here in the UK, this has got a full 18 certificate because the film did involve a fair amount of gore and violence. So obviously the release that I'm going to be mainly focusing on today is the UK Entertainment in Video Region B Blu-ray release, which is a single disc that has both the 3D version and the 2D version of the film on it. So on to the picture quality, and this film is presented in its 2:40:1 aspect ratio. As I've already mentioned, the film is completely uncut, and I have to say, on the Blu-ray it actually looks pretty good. This was one of those films that was actually shot for 3D and not a post-conversion. So most of the composition and photography would probably work really well for the 3D version of the film. And from what I understand, from what I've read, they did actually brighten the 3D version to have the same impact even when wearing the glasses. But as far as the 2D version goes, this film is very stylized. Some parts of it are very bright and colourful and beautiful, where other parts are much darker and more gritty. But I think the important thing here is the 1080p HD picture really does captivate the filmmaker's intentions very well. And I had a lot of fun revisiting this film and was very happy with the picture quality and clarity. Now obviously I'm not able to compare to the 4K UHD or the 3D edition, as I haven't been able to watch those for this review. But I can certainly say the Blu-ray edition that I have, that can actually be picked up fairly cheap nowadays, gives an excellent picture quality here. Okay, onto the audio, and this is again where things are a little bit more complicated depending on where you are geographically and which version of the film you've bought. Because I know, for example, the Lionsgate version features a DTS 7.1 audio system which is optimized for Neo X. Now, everything that I've heard about this suggests that the audio on this would really blow your mind, much in the same way as when you watched it at the theatre on the big screen. Now, the UK edition, as with many of the other regions, features a DTS 5.1 soundtrack, which I have to say didn't disappoint at all. When I watched this on my Sennheiser surround headphones, and I found that the separation was really good on this film, plenty of sub bass, and it really worked in the action sequences without compromising hearing the dialogue clearly. So for me, again, I would say that anyone purchasing this version would be happy with the DTS 5.1 soundtrack that they get here. Now onto the special features. As I've mentioned, some of the regions, such as the German and the Japanese, for example, have slightly different named extras on there to what there is here on the UK version. Plus, the Lionsgate version has a slightly longer featurette called Mega City Masters 35 Years of Judge Dredd. Now, this featurette comes in at just about 15 minutes. And what I suspect is this comprises of some of the shorter featurettes and the interviews that we get on the UK version. So I don't believe it actually contains anything extra, it's just edited and packaged slightly differently. Likewise, they get a 15-minute featurette called Days of Chaos, the visual effects of Dredd, which again I think may be just repackaged versions of some of the featurettes that I'm about to get into. I hope that makes sense. I'm just trying to explain what the differences are between the different regions here, but obviously I've only got the UK Region B Blu-ray to compare anything to. Now, one of the things I will say is this is presented with 6 short featurettes followed by half an hour of cast and crew interviews. And I don't know whether this was just on the pressing that I have, but something that was odd was, apart from the first short featurette, the remainder ones seem to be missing the on-screen captions that give the name and the job of the person being interviewed. So you see them passionately talking about the film, but all along you're trying to work out, well, what exactly did they do on the film? What was their role? Unless it's something obvious like an actor or the writers or directors, which are credited on the first featurette, it's a bit confusing. So what I suggest is you watch the interviews first, because the interviews give everybody's name and job title as captions on the screen, so that when you go back and watch the featurettes, you know exactly who everyone is. Now, between the interviews and the featurettes, there is a little bit of repetition, but it's just my suggestion that you go back and do it that way if you're genuinely interested in this stuff. Now, all these featurettes are extremely short, the longest one being about 3.5 minutes, and most of them under 2 minutes, which is disappointing because I think there's quite a lot that could be discussed about the making of this film and the legacy of what had come before it. So first up, you get Dredd, the original featurette. As I said, this is only about 3.5 minutes, and it's just an overview of the character, a brief history of his backstory in the comics, and how they took this character and adapted him for the big screen. It'll be no surprise to people who watch me on these things that I wish they had delved much deeper into this, but there you go. Next up is a short featurette called Slow Mo, which talks briefly about the drug that is at the centre of this storyline, plus the cameras that were used to create the slow motion effect. Again, some good stuff here, but just covered very briefly. Next you get Welcome to Peachtree's featurette, which is an overview of the location of the film and deals with the production design involved in this. Then you get the Third Dimension featurette, which talks about how they shot this for 3D, the cameras they used to do so, and the challenges and the creative thoughts behind doing so. Next you get another short featurette called Dredd's Gear, and this looks not only at the Judge Dredd costume, but also the lawgiver and lawmaster in this film and some of the other props that were designed and produced for this. It's pretty cool. And then you get a very short Dredd featurette, which is more or less an extended trailer with a few interview snippets thrown in. So altogether with the featurettes, that's less than 15 minutes total running time, which I think is slightly disappointing. However, on the brighter side, we then get 30 minutes worth of cast and crew interviews, which are extended interviews as seen in the featurettes, only without the behind the scenes footage and cutaways to production stills and diagrams. As I already mentioned, this is where you get the name and title of everybody speaking, which helps give it better context when you watch the featurettes. And that is unfortunately it as far as special features go here. There's no audio commentaries and no in-depth documentaries. As I said, there are some slight differences with featurette titles and running times on some of the other releases, but there's no release out there that has sort of one all-encompassing feature-length documentary or a commentary, which I do think, based on some of the production history of this film, is a little bit of a missed opportunity, but there you go. So that's it for the UK Blu-ray Region B for Dredd, which, as I said, includes both the 3D and 2D version on a single disc. Now for the picture quality here, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. As I said, I'm really happy with the overall quality of the picture here. I think it looks great in this high def version, and I can only imagine it being better with a 4K UHD with high dynamic range treatment, but this works really well. And for the audio, I'm also going to give it a 4 out of 5. Okay, the UK version is just a DTS 5.1, but as I said, it works really well. Levels are really well done, and it really delivered as an audio track. But if you really are an audiophile and you have the equipment to support it, then maybe consider the US Lionsgate release, which has the DTS 7.1 as well as the support for Neo X. Again, if you have the equipment to do this, and bear in mind that unless you're getting the 4K UHD, the Blu-ray is Region A locked. And finally, onto the special features. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. What is there is really good. They show plenty of behind the scenes footage. They show some design diagrams, tours of sets and props, etc. and some good interviews. But unfortunately, everything that we get here is less than an hour's worth of material on a movie that I feel could have gone a lot more in depth. My only hope is at some point they release a new special edition and put some retrospective commentaries and documentaries on that release. Maybe the 4K when it comes out over here. So that gives us a total score of 11 out of a possible 15. As I said, it is a good disc. You can pick it up fairly cheap these days. I will put some links down below as to where you can find this one, as well as the North American 4K Lionsgate version. If you do use any of my affiliate links, it does actually help this channel to grow without any extra cost to you, so any support there is greatly appreciated too. I'll also include a link below to that Dredd stream that I was part of as well, if you want to check that out. And that brings me to the end of another home media minefield. If you did indeed find this information helpful, then please do smash that like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss anything moving forward. I post DVD and Blu-ray and 4K reviews that compare against different versions that are out there, along with unboxings, live streams, podcasts, and even some short films. So I'll put some links below as to where you can find all of that stuff. Please check that out also. If you were curious about what I'm talking about when I mentioned region codes earlier, then please check out my other video on this channel, which is Region Coding Explained, where I give a very brief overview as to what all of that means. But if you've got any questions or comments, then please do put that down below and I will get back to you. And if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to review or look into, again, put it there, and if I can help with that, I absolutely will. But in the meantime, I thank you for your time today, and I will speak to you at the next Home Media Minefield. Bye for now.